talking about ethics today. And I know that all of us have had our own experiences with readers of a variety of kinds that may not be the most ethical. Are any experiences standing out to y'all, like as we start this conversation?
With the boom of TikTok and the TikTok readings and stuff. There's a I don't I don't know. For me, it's the ones that get me are people who are in despair and just covered in grief. So they're in the comment section asking like, "Will things get better?" And the person is charging like $5 or $10 a card or more sometimes. And they'll actually pull cards on like, will things get better? That's like, yes, obviously things are going to get better. You're at a bad spot right now, but so that always kind of gets my goat.
Yeah. Similar feelings, and I've seen things on TikTok, and then I've had like my own personal experience where I had it was like a little solar return reading, and this astrologer like predicted the death of a loved one over the next year, and that never happened. That person
Yeah.
is still alive, and they were predicting like pay attention to they said my bladder specifically, and nothing ever happened in that region either. So it was just like I was worrying about like the death of this loved one literally the whole year, and like anytime anything happened I was like, oh fuck, this is it. And so it was just like on the back of my head, like, or the back of my mind, like literally the whole year. And that was not a great year, honestly. So yeah, that was something that it was a learning experience for me, that I never want to do that for someone else.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah, I had a very similar experience to you, Mackenzie, where, the potential of a loss in my family was brought up during a reading. And, it kind of made sense because I do have some people in my family that are older or have like challenging health issues. And so it made sense at the time, but like the same thing happened to me, Mackenzie. It was like everything that happened that year, I was like, oh no, it's happening. And then
right.
never happened. They're all still kicking. So,
Oh gosh.
yeah. And so, that is one of many reasons that we are talking about ethics today, because it is such an important thing to talk about. I think it's kind of the thing in the spiritual realm that to me is like the most important thing to talk about. And I feel like it's really not spoken about as much as it probably should be. And we actually plan to do this episode because Mackenzie and astrologer Jen Russell and I have a Discord community called the Astro Den. And not too long ago, we had a conversation start in there about somebody who had received a reading that really caused them a lot of problems in their life because they were given advice that didn't really honor the realities of their lived experience, specifically racism. And all this to say, this was very upsetting for me to hear because I think that as readers ourselves, I know that we are all very particular about our ethics, and for good reason, I think. I think that it's a responsibility that we have as readers that consider ourselves ethical, is to take these things seriously, and also I think to talk about them. So that's what we're here to do today. What are ethics? Because it's like a word we know, but what are we actually really talking about here? So it's really our moral principles and values, and specifically our principles that govern our conduct as professionals. And so it's really interesting because there are professional bodies that you can be a part of, but it's not a requirement. And like, I also think as much as I think ethics are important, it's funny because I also don't think that there should be like a governing body that, we all have to belong to that's like coming down on us if we do or don't do a certain thing. Like, I don't necessarily want that kind of overreach, especially because astrology, there's so many ways to practice it. And I don't know, I feel like that could lead to maybe other problems. But all this to say is that, like, as professionals, there's really not like a ton of oversight on us unless you're like flat out committing tax fraud or whatever. You're just defrauding people in general. Other than that, it's kind of like, as long as you're following laws, you're on your own. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of room for error in there, I guess is one way to put it. And so it's, I think, important when you are picking out a reader to work with or to try out to figure out, like, does this person care about ethics? Do they have ethical standards? Is this something that is important to them? It's not something that you can necessarily like go on somebody's website and like read about their ethics. Maybe you can, but it might be something that you have to research a bit. And so my goal with this episode is I'd love for listeners to come away with a better understanding of how they can keep an eye out for things that maybe should be red flags, and also green flags, things that are good things about readers that might be, somebody worth trying. So what are some red flags for y'all in terms of readers, whether it's a psychic medium, whether it's a tarot reader, whether it's an astrologer, any kind of reader? Are there any red flags that you tend to notice?
The one that I think of right off the top of my head is how people talk about like their clients and how much information they divulge about their clients and like their readings. And yeah, I mean, like there's a confidentiality that comes with readings that I feel like what's talked about in the reading should stay within the readings. And like there's certain things that like, it's almost like HIPAA, like there's certain things that you can talk about, but like the details in the readings, like even if you're not saying names, I feel like there's certain details that should stay between like reader and client, And so a red flag is like if the psychic or the astrologer is giving a lot of information about readings and telling personal information without like necessarily saying names, but like there's things that you can pick out from how they talk about it. I don't know if that made sense.
That makes perfect sense.
No,
I think
it makes sense.
Yeah, because there are people that will reference their readings. And I think that's something that, at least as a reader myself, the times that I do mention things like that, I try to be very vague about what I'm talking about, and just always with the intent of something larger, but not sacrificing the privacy of that person whatsoever. Exactly. That's so important. It's so important because I don't know, like most people, I don't think want to go to a reader where they're going to catch them on a live stream talking about the reading that they had. And even if they don't say their names, it's still not a good feeling. And I think it's not a good look, and it doesn't really speak well to the reader's ethics. And it's so interesting that you brought up HIPAA because, for people that go to doctors or work with medical information, there are laws around how you share that information. And in fact, you can be severely reprimanded or even lose your license in certain situations for disclosing private information like that. But the thing about it is we, like I said, there's no governing body. So there is no legality around this. You really just have to trust your reader. So that's an important thing to know, is we aren't therapists unless we are like literally trained therapists. There are some readers that are that. Most of us are not. And so we're not bound to those legal, restrictions that other professions are bound to. And so it becomes even more important, I think, to make sure that you're working with somebody that's ethical. What's more personal than your life?
Exactly.
There's nothing more personal, more valuable. And so I think, yeah, if you notice that your reader there's a reader that we're going to keep mentioning TikTok because it's just very easy to find these red
Oh yeah.
flags all over that feed. But there is this one reader who will chastise clients, and they're a medium. I don't know about that, but they're a medium, and I've seen them chastising people that aren't understanding the evidence
Yeah.
that's coming forward. And there are reasons for that, I think, that don't have anything to like, there's no reason a reader should ever talk down to you, should ever make you feel bad or chastise you. And I think that that's a huge red flag for me. It doesn't really matter what's going on. There's never a reason to like go off on a client like that. You know what
I'm
I
so
mean?
angry. So angry at the
I
Oh
moment.
no.
know.
No, because it's not. No, there's no reason to do that. If your sitter does
Mm-hmm.
not understand the information, either they're experienced psychic amnesia, and they may remember it 2 or 3 days from now, or you're getting it fucking wrong.
Right.
It's
Yes.
literally as simple as that. Like, we are not perfect. If you go to anyone and they tell you with 100% certainty, I am always accurate, I can do this, I can do that, you're fucking lying, and you're just trying to take people's money. And I will tell them that to their face. But anyway, yeah, much like both of y'all, a huge red flag for me is bragging. I cannot fucking stand someone who brags, and you're bragging and you're good at fucking everything. I was taught, if you are expending your energy as a psychic medium and an astrologer and a fucking tap dancer, and how good are you actually going to be at the one thing that you're selling, right?
Right.
That needs to be your main focus. So I don't like the bragging. I don't like bragging about readings or
Yeah.
shit like that. I think there's a certain amount of humbleness that is important when it comes to doing readings, because if your reader is not fucking humble, then to me it's almost like, and I'm not trying to shame anyone that has been through this by the way I'm about to say it, but it's also just, I guess, my country ass, I don't know how to say it, if they are not humble when they're on live or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, how can you expect them to be humble and meet you with humility and grace and keep your secrets and everything else in a one-to-one session? They're not fucking going to. If they're bragging about everything else, they're not going to keep your secrets. That's not how that works. That tells you right there who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, my 2 cents, and also my angry 2 cents.
That's great because the next one that I wanted to talk about is ego. And this is a delicate one, I think, to talk about because I do think in spiritual spaces, like ego can be really viewed negatively. And, the reality is that everybody has an ego. And so it's an important thing to kind of have a hold on, because is the ego out of control is kind of, I think, what it comes down to. Everybody has an ego. There's nothing wrong with being confident.
There you go.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a line between confidence and an out of control ego.
Cocky.
Yeah, and I think that as a reader, I
Arrogance.
think that an ego and arrogance, I think it really gets in the way of the work. And that was something I learned working with you, Miss Carrie, because if for those who don't already know, Mackenzie and I have studied psychic mediumship with Carrie. And so that was something that was an incredible gain from the work that we've done together, because when you're doing psychic mediumship and you're delivering evidence, you might get a no, but if you want to keep
Mhm.
that connection that you have going, it really can't phase you too much. And so practicing it, letting it not phase me, you know, in terms of my astrology readings, it was a huge benefit to have that experience because the no's don't really bother me as much.
Right.
And it doesn't damage my ego enough to where I'm switching focus in the reading. And I agree, it's so important to keep the humanity of our clients in mind, because you're dealing with their lives, and having respect for that. So it's not about my ego. It's not about me being right as a reader. And it's not about me getting bragging points or having something that I can, talk about on a live stream and make myself feel better about it, And so if
Yeah.
if you find a reader that it feels like that's what it's really about for them, that there's something that maybe a void that they're trying to fill through, being so good at what they do. Like, I love, by the way, I'm a Capricorn moon. I love being good at my job. I love being good at my job.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I will never love being good at my job more than I care for and respect the person that I'm working
Mhm.
with. And I think it's an important thing to understand too, as readers, we are not above people coming
Exactly.
down to give them a
Exactly.
reading. This is a parallel relationship. We are coming alongside you. And on an ethical level, that's a huge thing that's important to me. And I would say that's a green flag as somebody that is beside you and not above you. And that's really
Right.
something that you got to feel, I think.
Mhm.
For me, it's kind of like when I tell when we do like we do education at the shop or educate in class. If you're going to find a reader, whether it's me or no matter who it is, and that's what I tell people. Um, Watch them, right? Don't just watch one video. Don't just go to their website and read the airy fairy "I'm so fantastic" story or their story in general. Watch them. And I mean, I'm sure y'all have heard me say it before, but baby, you want to blow your money up a wild hog's ass, you go on and do that, and then maybe you'll go find you a good reader. But what what hurts my heart, what bothers me, is you have people, whether it's a psychic reading or an astrology reading, who people don't. I mean, at least for me and my realm of what I do, people don't come to me when they're in a good fucking place. Right. In astrology, I could see people come when they're not so good place, but also when they are in a good place and they just want to know shit. Um, so, I get a front row ticket to someone's grief every time they sit down in front of me. Um, and so I guess that again brings in the, like, why would I go away and brag if I tell a story about something that spirit has given me? um, I've asked permission, and it is something that has put me in such awe that I can't help but to share it. And I think I've only shared like maybe two stories of my readings in general, and I've been doing this since like 2013. Um, but yeah, watch your people, watch their reels, all that. Try to catch their lives before you book a session, or at least before you make a payment, because a lot of times on these lives, it's I don't want to say unhinged, but they're talking and talking and talking. Then someone asks a question, and it's like, "Well, I've said that 50 fucking times," and they lose their mind. And it's like, "Well, God, motherfucker, I mean, that's the smallest question. Why are you losing your mind over some shit like that? Like,
Yeah.
honey, you all right? Blink twice. I don't know what to tell you." So that watching to see what they're about, but also those little sort of social cues, if you're able to watch them, and
Mhm.
how authentic do they sort of present themselves. Do their goals, does their thoughts, does whatever match up with what you believe in? Because if you got somebody over here that, I don't know, believes that fucking east is west, and you got somebody over here that west is east, and it's all fucked up. Y'all ain't gonna mesh.
Mhm.
Right.
You're wasting your money and time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think that's a great other red flag to mention is like lack of boundaries,
Mm.
yeah,
and I would say that somebody, going off on somebody for a pretty harmless question would be, for me, that speaks to like a lack of boundaries. And I think that it's really important when we're doing this type of work to have limitations, I think, to what our behavior is going to look like. And that, I really strongly believe that that doesn't mean that you need to accept, mistreatment or abuse yourself, because I've had people reprimand me for like matching somebody's energy that was harassing me online. Like, I think, if somebody's harassing you, like, and if you're looking for a reader that's not gonna clap back sometimes, I'm not the one. I'm not the
Yeah,
one.
I'm not the fucking one either.
Yeah, I'm just
Not
not.
yet.
But I will never I don't attack people unprompted. And
Yeah.
I certainly don't take my shit out on clients or just people that are looking for like more clarity and information. And sometimes that means that I am not able to in that moment provide that information for them. And that's a boundary of mine too. And so I think, it can be a positive thing to be like, what, that's not a question that I can really answer in this setting,
Right.
that kind of a thing. It's okay for people to have boundaries. It's just, how do they handle themselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right.
And I think lack of boundaries too really speaks to like, if as readers we have a lot going on and it's so overwhelming in our lives that we can't handle our own shit, it's probably time to take a step back from the work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not the kind of person that can create that boundary between, what you've got going on and your clients, that's a problem.
Well, that would bring up a green flag too, which would be motherfucker, authenticity. There you go, authenticity.
Yes.
Because yeah, sometimes somebody's gonna piss you off, and you're gonna be like, "Hey, baby, fuck you, go eat dirt," But you're not doing that. You're not doing that all the time, no matter how active you are online. So someone being authentic and open, and all that. I mean, do we have secrets? Do I have secrets that I don't want to tell the whole internet? Yeah, absolutely. Just like Joe Blow next door does. Everybody has something, but I'm not necessarily. For me, I'm just not going to be anything other than what I am. Now, in that, am I going to be honest with you and tell you I'm only going to be vulnerable enough with you to allow you to see a certain amount of vulnerability, because I don't like being vulnerable or whatever else. But, for me, a green flag is being authentic. And a lot of times, just to put a little thing on it, a lot of times you can feel in your body, your gut, your whatever, by watching someone, whether or not they're going to be for you right off the bat. If you're scrolling through TikTok looking for a reader and you land on somebody and there's this feeling of, oh God, no, then that ain't the one, But if you're scrolling through and you land on Mackenzie and it's like, oh my God, she's like the sweetest little thing ever, then that might be your person, then start watching, kind of thing. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I do think like when you watch someone a lot, you start to get a feel for who they are as a person. And if they switch up a lot, I think that shows them, not being authentic. And like you said, you can feel when like you're aligned with someone or whatever, but you can also feel when there's something off about someone, whether it's like they're not being themselves or they're just kind of putting on a show or whatever it might be. Like you can feel that. And so it's kind of like going back to the person, like listen to what your body is saying about a certain person and honor that, don't just like say, oh, it's probably nothing. So yeah, pay
Yeah.
attention to that.
And you don't have to be like a psychic who can just sing readings out your ass. That's your intuition, which is as natural in you as breathing. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have a special, I'm doing air quotes, gift of discernment. It's already there, you know, just for clarification, like I know everything.
That brings up my next point, is that another red flag for me is that people that give advice that they don't take. And in the
Mm,
spiritual space, depending on the person, because it's going to depend on the reader, not every reader is kind of operating out in the world in the same way, or, building their work or building their platform in the same way. But there are certain readers who are creating this kind of larger way of approaching life, and almost a little bit more of like a movement, I would say. And so I've had the experience where, I've seen somebody in this field like give advice that they weren't living. You
Yeah.
should do such and you should develop such and it's important to do such and such. And then when you look at their life and the way that they're living their values, I'm like, I'm not seeing that reflected in how you live your life. And
Yeah.
so for me, that is a red flag, because that just shows me there's like a larger disconnect there that, for me, because of the intimacy that's kind of inherent in any kind of reading, that's going to be a no. That's going to be a no for me, because, to me, I don't personally have the desire to create any kind of professional relationship with people that are like that, because my values are so important to me. And so it's like, I don't need a reader to believe everything that I believe, but there are lines for me that I am aware of. And so that's another thing that I watch for, is like, is this person going to be a good fit for me? Because if they're not able to kind of live their values, there's a lack of, I think, trust for me in
Right.
that department.
I can see that, but I'm also going to be completely transparent, because that's always important to me. I do not practice what the fuck I preach. I
Nope.
don't. I just
And that's
don't.
fine. I mean, I don't
Um,
think we have to be perfect, is not what I'm
no, no,
No,
saying.
no,
yeah.
no. But I do feel like for a lot of the readings, right? If I'm telling you something and I'm advising you, I will straight tell you, because this is something I have lived through. This is something that spirit has given me, or this is something I'm picking up on, or whatever. Now, on the other side of it, if I have not lived it or have not went through it in some kind of way, and we're just talking on the other side of it, then I'm not going to touch on it. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You stand in
So
your
I
own
can
lane.
Yeah, yeah. So I can absolutely see what you're talking about, but also, just to be transparent,
Hmm.
no, half the time I don't practice what the fuck I preach, because it's different for me, because I am getting my information from
Yes.
different sources. It's outside. It's outside of me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, just in case somebody's like,
Because in the spiritual space, there are people with these like larger platforms, that are making predictions about the way that human beings need to kind of evolve to adapt to the current circumstances, but they themselves are not
Doing
embodying
it.
that.
Hmm.
That's specifically what I was referring to.
no, no, no. I know. I just didn't want someone to like watch or listen and be like,
Hmm.
"This bitch is on here saying this shit," when she
Yeah.
knows good and well 5 minutes from now she gonna like light up a cigarette as soon as she gets the fuck off here. And yes, I am, but still, that ain't nobody's business.
Right.
No. So would it be fair to say, in a roundabout way, there's certain levels
Yes.
to ethics, or certain levels to what you're talking about?
Hmm.
I feel like there's certain levels to it. If
I'd
you're
agree.
putting yourself like way up here on a pedestal, and
Mm.
we got to do this, and you have to do this, and and you're like very passionate about it and strong, but at the same time, you're being an asshole and meeting a married man in the middle of fucking Costco, then you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're not living right either. While you're giving tidbits on humanity. Do you see what I'm saying? So I feel like
Yes.
there's levels to it. I don't know.
100%.
Hmm.
I agree. I agree. And I don't expect my readers to be perfect or to have everything figured out. But I do think that their intentions matter to me, I guess is what I'm getting
Yes.
at, is that their intentions matter to me. And I think somebody with a perspective of, hey, the world is really messed up, and in order to make it less messed up, we need to adjust our behavior in this way. But that's for you. You people down there do that. I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
cash it in and do my own thing, and good luck to all of y'all. That's a problem for me.
Yeah.
That's a problem for
Yeah.
me. And that's, and I'm being kind of specific because this is a real thing that I think is doing I think it does damage, and I think
Yeah.
I've seen it do damage.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it's important. I don't expect readers by any means to be perfect. We're human beings. I think that's a really important thing to know when you're looking at any reader, is that regardless of how ethical somebody is or how much they care, that doesn't mean that they're always going to be perfect.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I can get on board with that for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that we need to make excuses for like unethical behavior either, but it's just something to, keep in mind as you're making these judgment calls for yourself.
I think it's important. We don't have to be perfect. We don't even have to fucking strive for perfection. But we do have to have enough self awareness to put one foot in front of the other or whatever to fucking become a better human being. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are a shitbag human being on the pulpit preaching, then you're still a shitbag human being. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Oh,
the
yes.
for me the point of it, or not the point of it, for me it's important that if you are a shitbag, you're still practicing self awareness and moving to get out of your shitbaggery.
Yeah, be less of a shitbag. I agree with that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really big green flag for me with readers, is that they are self-aware. Really big green green flag for me, self-aware. But also that they are working on themselves, because regardless of whether you're reading uh, mediumship readings, whether you're doing psychic readings, whether it's an astrology reading, all of these practices, I think, are revolving around the fact that we are living, changing creatures. And so we should be moving in a direction of hopefully, bettering ourselves in
Yes.
some way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not bettering yourself, then how the fuck can you tell anybody else how to better themselves?
Right.
I'm spicy on this episode.
That's okay. It's a spicy topic. I think it's a very spicy topic. You know, it, there's a lot of things to, I think, look out for in this space, and I think because it is, the spiritual space is very diverse in a sense. Like there's just a lot of different ways to approach this stuff, and it's very intimate, and some of it is not grounded in reality necessarily. So there's just a lot of room for exploitation, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I think it's so important to talk about ethics, because,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that ethics isn't important in other areas, but I just think it's a really easy place for that stuff to get muddy really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
When you said exploitation, and that just made me feel another red flag is like fear mongering. Yeah, that's a huge
Mm-hmm.
one, I think.
Oh God.
And
Yeah.
just people who kind of like prey on people's fears or people's insecurities, or just people who kind of take advantage of that, and almost like it's like they create fear to make people feel dependent on them, and that gives them this sense of power. And that is a
Yes.
huge, huge, huge red flag that, I mean, I've experienced it and I've seen
I
it,
have
and it
too.
is disturbing and it is scary. And I think it's a huge thing. That's a huge problem in this, community or whatever.
It's really important to talk about, I think, right now with the astrology we have going on, because we are in a massive time of change and people are really looking for clarity and security. And so sometimes people in this space will present themselves as people that have all the answers. And I'm 100% not against people seeking information or seeking comfort or guidance, because I think that's like kind of a human thing, is just, needing more information, needing support. Maybe somebody knows more than you do, and sometimes because of the work we do have a little bit more insight into the potential future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big that's a big responsibility. And that's another thing, is it's a green flag for me when people understand that responsibility and they wield it very carefully.
It's a green flag for me when you're not making videos predicting the future right? Because if you're not doing that, then you know a little bit about a little bit and how quickly shit can change.
Mm-hmm.
Because it
Right.
goes into what Mackenzie said
Mm-hmm.
as fear mongering. Since the beginning of fucking time, people have used fear to control us. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing that's happening now on social media. Fear, I mean, fuck, there's hurricanes coming, there's this coming, there's that coming. I mean, put it on the fucking bingo board, throw a dart at it. You're going to get something right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I don't know what, it messes me all up because, and please know, I'll say a lot of times I'm an asshole, and 95% of the time I am. I'm just being honest. But I feel it really hurts my heart for people because I also like Mackenzie. I'm one of them motherfuckers. I bought a whole goddamn stockpile of beans and rice and fucking shit because what was it 2-3 years ago that Snowmageddon was coming to wherever, but I'm still eating fucking ramen and rice so but I feel so sorry for people who who they because it's our human condition to want to know what is coming, what is coming, what is coming, and that is a part of our trauma. That's a part of what we've been through. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a part of us, and so in that we're trying to find the answers, trying to find the answers, trying to find the answers, and we can't always stop and even have that self-awareness with ourselves and say, you're just fucking looking for something. You are looking for something to pick at so you can go off the rails because that's what you're
Mm.
used to right now, right? And that's what unethical readers, unethical people, that's what they are counting on.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not, I mean, I don't give a shit if, your predictions are right 98 out of 100. You know, how much of that is happenstance and how much of it is an actual prediction? You know, Donald Trump's going to have a wardrobe mishap. Okay, at 5:30 on a Tuesday, he lost a goddamn button. Oh, you was right on the money. Like, what? Anyway. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a lot.
Fear is a really important one because it's an easy thing to tap into. And I think if people are kind of if as readers if we're always kind of going for the easy stuff that is generating fear or like, those FYP readings that are like your ex is coming back.
Oh,
Those are things
Jesus.
that are, they're preying on something that is very common. Heartbreak, fear, uncertainty. Those are things that are, throw a rock and you'll hit somebody that it applies to. It's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
easy. It's easy. And so if you notice that people are dipping into that stuff a lot, that may be a sign that they have different concerns than you do. Very easy to kind of grow a following around that, I think.
Just like going back to the fear thing, I've had to almost have to clean up some of those things in my own readings. Like I've had people come in to get a reading with me and they're scared and they're saying like, "Oh, do you see anything in my chart that I have to be aware of?" Like there's these people and they're predicting these like big weather, for example, or something, and like they're scared for their own well-being, and I'm having to be like, you know what, it's not a bad idea to be prepared, but like worrying about something that may never come, like that's not helpful. And so yeah, it's not always helpful to tune into that, which I know is easier said than done, but yeah, just it's hard.
Yeah.
Can I ask y'all a question as astrologers? Because Mackenzie just triggered something in me, or a question. So I know we talked about like there being levels of ethics, right? Um, I am positive that y'all have to undo a lot of this. Like, Aries is assholes, and you're obnoxious and overconfident, and you just suck generally as a human. So then you have a person who's an Aries come to you for a reading, right? How often do you have to do on that? Undo that. It must be so fucking tiring to have to keep fixing it over and over again. And then what level of being unethical would you put that at? Because you see it all over TikTok.
Hmm.
Leo, Aries, Sagittarius, get ready because this new moon is going to fuck you up, and then you're like, oh God.
It's
So, yeah,
sloppy. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
sloppy astrology. It's really
Hmm.
sloppy astrology to be like, hey, if your rising sign is such and such, get ready for this eclipse.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's just so broad. It's so broad. And it's tough because I do sympathize in a certain sense because it's very hard to make generalized astrology content. And so that's partly why that happens.
Hmm.
But I think the people lean into a lot of stuff that they don't need to lean into just to get, views and clicks and stuff. For me personally, when people come to me and they have some weird idea about some part of their chart, I don't love that they've been misled or maybe thinking about themselves in a negative light. But it's actually one of my favorite things to do is to correct bad
Hmm.
astrology and give
Yeah.
people that reassurance. And I also think it builds trust between them and me because I'm not here to make you feel bad or tell you that you're the worst person because I don't think that's true.
And there's so many of us that I mean, fuck, we're walking around. We already feel bad enough about
Exactly.
ourselves. Like kind of like if
Right.
a person comes to you with a Pisces Venus and they absolutely hate it, you have to sort it out for them.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy doing that for people because, the work that I'm doing, and, I would say to some degree, I am one of those people that's kind of engaging in a movement because I have a very strong perspective and I see where things are going. And I do think it's really important for us to be very community oriented. And I think that, like, caring about each other and building forward together is a really important part of where we're going. And a lot of the issues that we're experiencing right now, we are having our self doubt and our insecurities preyed upon
Hmm.
by, systems that are exploiting us for a variety of reasons. So I view it as the center of my work to
Yeah.
undo that and help come alongside people and help them see that they have a lot going for them and that they are valuable and that they don't deserve to be exploited and certainly not by themselves.
Hmm.
So it's that uplifting movement
Hmm.
in its own way.
Yeah, and that's really important to me because, like I said, I think if you're somebody that is kind of a little bit more in that like movement arena where you're trying to, help people on maybe a more mass scale, I do think that, your values can come into questions. Like, how are you
Right.
living your life? What are you doing? How do you treat the people in your life? I think that's important stuff. We
Hmm.
don't always have the answers to that. We don't always know what people are doing, in their personal lives. But I would say it's something that, if you kind of get get ideas about somebody's personal life and they're like you hear something you're like that's not something that I necessarily am comfortable with. I think that's okay, especially when somebody's representing themselves and what they believe in a certain way.
For me as a psychic medium, it can be very upsetting. And now, let me preface this by saying, not everybody is going to agree with what I say, and that is perfectly fine as long as we respect each other's belief systems. Um, a red flag for me when it comes to psychic mediumship is evil spirits, stuck spirits. Your grandmother is, whatever, stuck somewhere or whatever. Those are always um, red flags to me because that's not how spirit works in my experience. Now, in saying that, there are other religious belief systems and things like that believe in those things, and that's not to discount those people because your perception is your reality, and what you believe is what you believe. But it's not my lived experience as a psychic medium doing readings. But to me, it's unethical to tell someone that because I always kind of think of my mother going to someone to get a reading and say she's my little brother comes through and the medium proceeds to tell her that he is stuck in limbo or purgatory or whatever. Why in the fuck would you tell a mother that her son or anyone that their loved one is stuck when that's not what is actually That's not what actually is happening or there or whatever else. So for me, that's always a red flag as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's very you know, just be kind, man. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, I guess that's if that's what you believe. I don't know. It's like it's a hard thing for me because if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. But also there's a certain belief system in me that's also says that's just shitty mediumship.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
for all I know, a spirit can be stuck, via this medium all the fucking time because you can't get more evidence or
Hmm.
because the spirit is done talking to you in that moment. So, and you've got too much ego and you're too prideful to just say, hey, Shug, that's all I'm getting, man. That's it. So that's red flags
Yeah.
for me.
I think that would go back to like fear and spreading misinformation
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
definitely be red flags. What are some ethical standards that you value in your own practice?
Oh, fuck, that's a hard question, Kaycee.
So for me, one of my ethical standards is that I do think that this work, regardless of what kind of reader you are, regardless of your personal belief system, this work is sacred, I guess is the word that kind of comes to mind. And again, it's like anything that is dealing with the intimacies of being human. Like it's very important to remember that, unless a reader is actually like a trained and licensed therapist, they're not a therapist. But I frequently bring the comparison to like if you were choosing a therapist, right? Like you want them to understand that what you're doing is important, and I would say there's a sacredness to that work too. So in the same vein, I think that it's important to really value the work that you're doing and know that it is important and know that it can have a massive impact on the people that you're working with. And so taking that seriously, valuing that, valuing those relationships that are created through the work are kind of the most important part of this to me.
I can get down with that. So I'm going to say that. But
Yes.
also, for me, in my work, it's very important to me that some type of healing occurs. If there's not some type of healing that occurs, then I end up. Now, this is just me personally. I end up feeling like I'm just kind of taking someone's money to take their money. Um, because we all got to be compensated energy for energy. So some form of healing happening is very important to me, as well as um, educating, um, educating on how not to get scammed or how to spot a scammer, or just just to really hold space um, for my sitter and be the vessel for spirit, just do the best I can, kind of thing, while being authentic.
I like both of your answers. I think adding on, like, I think I'm just a good secret keeper, and
Mm.
like I really can hold on to people's secrets like forever, and so I think I'm kind of like a lockbox, and I would never break confidentiality. I always say that at the beginning of my readings, like what we talk about in this reading, we're in this like bubble here, and I won't ever share this information with anyone else. And I stayed true to that, and um, I also just think I think all of us here, we all see everyone just as like human beings, and like just we're all equal, and like nobody's perfect, and we don't expect like ourselves to be perfect, but we don't expect the client to be perfect either. And so um,
Exactly.
we leave a lot of room for that. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot I feel like that
Hmm.
we could all say, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Centering humanity, I think, is a really important part of any reader's work, is understanding that we're human and so is whoever we're working with. and really honoring that. I think that kind of applies to the sacredness of the work, and from my perspective, I guess the sacredness of the human experience. So
Yeah.
well, thank you both for coming on to the podcast to talk about ethics. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm so glad that we were able to finally have this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.